been a pleasure meeting you, Mrs. Lewis.
Richard Matheson has always been the defining voice in science fiction for a lot of people that I know, and a lot of writers, starting with I Am Legend, to Stir of Echoes, The Incredible Shrinking Man, The Night Stalker. All of these stories just had a profound influence on me in helping to really shape my voice as a writer.
I wrote lots of stuff before I was a teenager. I even wrote a novel when I was 14. I sold my first short story called Born a Man and Woman in 1950, I think. And it did so well that I got an agent, and I started writing a few more stories and sold them. And little by little, it occurred to me that you might make a living at this. Not that I made much money, maybe they were paying, a penny a word back in those days. Until I sold The Shrinking Man, a novel, to the movies. It never really struck me, well, I thought maybe I could make a living at this. By then I had 4 children, so it was I had to do it. I had no choice. I wrote for Lawman. I did other stuff too. Charles Beaumont and I collaborated together on when we first started writing for television. We needed somebody to lean on, so we each worked together. Well, actually, I stole it from my wife. She was taking a class in psychology, and they asked students little poser questions like, one was, if it would create world peace, would you walk naked down Broadway? And this one was, if you could get $50,000, and all you had to do was agree that someone you didn't know would die. And so I was amazed that no one had ever taken that idea before. And they didn't have any writers in her class, obviously. Well, my mother, who was a very religious woman, said, "Do you have to write for that magazine?" And I said, "Mom, they have interviews with all these really important people, these scientists and these metaphysicians and everything." So I don't think I convinced her, but I got out of a tough spot. This book that I just wrote, I don't know, it seems like it's better written than anything I've ever done. Usually I can go through books I've written and read the parts of them and just think, well, that's okay. This one I really enjoy when I reread any particular part of it. Up to this point, Somewhere in Time was probably the best novel I ever wrote, sentence for sentence. And What Dreams May Come was probably the most effective novel I wrote. Oh, it's very important to me. It's always been. It's the thing I love the most. I've never had a dead period of writing. Of course, because with 4 children to support, you can't very well sit around and say, I'm waiting for the muse. So, but I've always enjoyed it, and I've never really felt a blank period. We just recently went to a convention downtown, Bram Stoker. He wasn't there, of course. And I'm always startled by the awe with which people greet me. Oh, I'm so honored to meet you, you know. Would you sign this for me? It's hard for me to believe, because I don't take myself that seriously.
I think the legacy of Richard Matheson is going to last for many, many years, and it's going to reach into many future generations of writers and directors. And I think we've only really scratched the surface. People are going to discover his stories, and I think we're going to see people continuing to adapt his work to the big screen for many years to come.